Uneducated, unfiltered, unhinged. This is the Mangina Dialogues. We at it again with your host Nick Scopes and the Gregalicious. You know how we do, cause you know we keeping it gangster and silly. Unplugged like a full swung titty. Bout get jitty, cause you know we down to the nitty and the gritty. And we make shit sound so damn pretty. Yeah, cause this unhinged comedy. And right now you're in the mix, so get ready, cause we about to get it poppin'.
Hello and welcome to the Mangina Dialogues. I am your host, Nick Scopes.
And I'm the Gregalicious.
And today we have the very funny Jackie Jokeman Martling.
You know,
What's
I don't
up,
mind doing this stuff for free, but I should be paid if I have to listen to music like that.
I was waiting for that.
I didn't mean to exaggerate. That's certainly not music.
Amen. Amen. We appreciate the honesty, Jackie. We really do.
We feel the same
now,
way.
first, I will tell you, listeners, I have absolutely no idea who either of you guys are.
Amen.
And I'm a product of the coronavirus doldrums, and I say yes to interviews before the phone even rings. So don't consider yourselves too special.
Oh, we don't. We have never considered ourselves special.
No.
And you said you're in Connecticut? Where are you in Connecticut? I'm in Bayville. I'm looking right across at you.
And you're looking right at me. I'm on the water on the other side of that, right south of Bridgeport in Fairfield.
Oh, I'm looking right at you. Hello. Can you see me waving?
I can. Just if you can poke your head out a little more.
That was my teepee.
Oh, wow. It was nice. Very nice.
So now, are you guys comics or are you radio guys? What are you?
Nick is a stand-up comedian. He's been doing it a couple of years, and I'm just a guy.
Do I know you, Nick? Did we ever work together for that cheap bastard Brad Axelrod?
No, you haven't.
I've not worked for. He's in my town, actually. He lives in my town.
Really? We had a party for him the other day. You know why?
Why?
Because he retired.
Yeah, he sold
and
his
now
company.
The word is out now that some of us will get paid.
We actually.
No, I'm kidding. I've known Brad for 40 years, and he's a very good guy. And he's the only guy I know in Connecticut.
Well, now you know two more. We actually also, hopefully, when this thing passes, we run a club that we opened up in October in South Norwalk. So maybe you'll get a chance, or Nick will get a chance to work with one of the greats.
I would love to come up there. You know what? You wind up telling stories. The Brad Axelrod had one of the first clubs in Connecticut called the Treehouse.
Yep.
And it was at the Westport Motor Inn downstairs in like 1985, I think it was. I was working at his club, and I had an interview that morning with a DJ to promote the show that night. And the day before, it was the 5th anniversary of a place called Rascals Comedy Club, which was pretty infamous in the early days. There were actually a couple of them. And it was the 5th anniversary, and I was hosting on a Thursday night. And at the end of the show, I said, all right, shots for the comedians. And the waitresses brought up all these shots. And all the other guys on the show were Jews, and they didn't drink. So I drank all the shots and then drove home. I drove to Westport. And I was driving along in Rye, New York, and I had to take a leak. And I got off. And I had no idea how to get back on the highway because it wasn't one of those highways where you drive off and drive on. You have to know the area. And I was so drunk, I was driving down I had the white line of the town's middle white line in the middle of my car so I wouldn't hit anything. And I got pulled over, and I went in for a DWI, and I spent the night in jail, and my wife had to come up, and it was so crazy. And she took me directly from jail to the morning interview. And every time I do an interview in Connecticut, this is all I can think of, because the morning DJ was this moron who was a ventriloquist. He was a disc jockey ventriloquist, and he was Spanish. And his ventriloquist doll was a friggin' parrot. So I'm sitting there dead drunk, fresh out of jail, talking to a parrot. It was unbelievable. Oh, my God. I'll never forget as long as I live. And that's all. The last time I talked to anybody, it was a ventriloquist doll parrot. And now I'm talking to you morons. That's my career right there in a nutshell.
Nick, put the parrot away, please. Put the dolls away. Put the dolls away.
So if he's a comic, what do you do?
Fuck.
I don't know what I do.
You're the rich kid with the money to start the club, and he's the guy who latched onto you because he needs a place to work. I see the whole thing from afar.
It's not you're not wrong in some respects, but I don't own the club. We actually started the club. It's part of another club, so it's someone else's rich kid's money.
Okay, good. Well, congratulations. I think it's fun. I was around in the very, very, very beginning when there was no such thing. We started comedy on Long Island. The first time we started comedy, it was in a restaurant upstairs with a sound system that I had left over from my music days, and we grew into the whole thing. So, and it's so much fun.
Yeah.
You guys. I can't believe you guys are going to the trouble of trying to put together a club, and then this crap hits. And obviously it's a lot worse for a lot more people than you, but it still sucks, right?
Oh, it totally sucks.
Not awesome.
We started in October. Actually, me and Nick have been promoting comedy shows together since May, about a year, just about 10 months ago, and we got the opportunity to sort of take over this club. Through a really nice guy who had a beautiful new renovated basement of his bar that holds about 70 people, and we jumped on it and started slowly building the club from 1 night to 2 nights to ultimately 4 nights before all this shit happened. And now we'll see what that means on the other side of this, but we were bringing out a lot of great comedians from Manhattan to headline our weekend shows, and it was really going great. And then this virus.
Yeah, I'll tell you, there's so many stories. I won't say who it is, but I got a very, very successful friend who started a major, major company and made a real lot of money. And he said, "What the hell, man? I'm going to give it a shot." And he hired the guys to write the script, and he's this great concept, this great Broadway play. He's got it all cast, all the songs are written, and they were just about to have the readings when this hit. So he's like $500,000 in. I mean, the odds of having a Broadway play succeed are minuscule to begin with.
Yeah, crazy.
And then to have, it's like he I don't know what he did in his last life, but he must have chopped up a nun with a hatchet or something, Who knows?
So how are you keeping busy out there on Long Island these days?
But, it's so funny because it's so hard. And I'm here with a beautiful girlfriend who cooks and cleans, and she just is so pleasant. And I'm right on the water looking out at Long Island Sound, and we're in a town that time forgot, and it couldn't be more, wonderful. And we're going crazy. So I can't imagine what it's like for anybody. It's so hard, It's so tough to explain that doing nothing is so hard, because the only time you really want to do nothing is when you have tons to do.
Yeah.
That's when doing nothing sounds good. You know what I mean? But but you do what of all things, I'm reading a book called The Great Influenza, which is just absolutely frightening.
Right.
But it's it's right in tune with what's going on, and it's crazy. I'll tell you who's a hero is Governor Cuomo. He's really risen to the occasion, and everybody loves him, and he's doing a wonderful. I don't know what you guys' politics are, but that stupid guy with the orange head hasn't got the brains he was born with. And
who said he was born with
I'm
any?
scared where we're going to wind up.
Yeah, I hear you, and I'm not convinced the orange guy was actually born.
You know how Trump wound up with a brain the size of a pea?
No, tell me.
The pressure of the job made it swell up. Hey, all I do is tell old jokes. That's the first joke I've written in probably 10 years, but it certainly was worth it.
Speaking
I'll
speaking
tell you,
of jokes,
I got a lot going on. I got a book out, and it's been doing well, not real well. It would have done a lot better 20 years ago when I just got off the Stern show, but it's kicking ass. And about a year ago, or a little more than a year ago, all of a sudden I got a huge bump, and it started selling like crazy. And I couldn't figure it out. And then it hit me, and it's so funny. Then my book is The Jokeman Bow to Stern. and it's my autobiography, and it's, you know, half about me and half about my life on the Stern Show, which was, you know, a major, major hunk of my life, of course. But of course, Howard never mentioned the book in any way, shape, or form to his listeners. And he's got millions and millions of people that only know about me from, like, you know, the old tapes and stuff like that. And there's still people, you know, it's funny how people, they miss me. Like, you know, some people have no idea who I am, and other people talk to me like I was on the show yesterday. It's so varied. But what happened was Howard put out another book. And when his book hit Amazon, I'm sure you guys have bought books on Amazon.
Yeah, of course.
If you buy a book on Amazon, underneath it'll say, people that have bought this book are also interested in these books. So right underneath his book, there's my book, and the people already had their credit card out, and they got the mouse, and with one click, they got my book too. So a lot of people just said, fuck it, and they bought my book too. So I'm sure he'd kill himself if he knew he helped me.
But I mean, that's, you know, I was going to ask you about Stern fans, right? Because I'm a fan. I've been listening since the mid-'80s. And, you know, the one thing that I know about Stern fans is that they're fanatical. Right. So,
and one way or another, you know, I still have people yelling at me for leaving the show.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It's been 20 years, you know. And then I got people that say, you know, the show is so much better since you're off it. You know, from A to Z, every possible permutation of opinion is still out there. But the operative thing is that everybody still has an opinion.
Yeah.
You know, nobody says, well, I don't care. You know what I mean? That they're still as invested. You know, when you spend 5 hours a day with people, you know, we spent more time in people's lives than most of their families and their wives and their children. You know, the guys, you know, the people commuting from Long Island are 2 hours a day going both ways. You know, it's crazy, you know.
Yeah, no, it's totally true. And, you know, I think what the fans, you know, the Stern fans is that, you know, probably a week doesn't go by that they don't mention Jackie on the show in some way, whether it's a guest or someone.
You know, it's so funny because some people tell me that, and other people say, you know, it's funny. I can't believe they never bring you up or they never mention you. And I'm like, well, are these guys listening to the same show? You know, I don't, you know.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's not every week, but it's certainly enough to, you know, to keep, especially, you know, guests that come on and, you know, that tell their favorite Stern show stories or, you know, whatever it is. I mean, yeah, it's been 20 years, but it's not like 20 years where you're just, you know, walked off the face of the earth and no one hears from you or hears about you, because the Stern fans are fucking crazy.
You know, it's great. You know, talk about timing. For a couple of years, the guy that I actually had a radio show on one of Howard's channels called Jackie's Joke Hunt for like 8 years on the Sirius on 101 on the second Stern channel.
Yep.
And we did it for 8 years. It was great fun. And my radio partner, Ian Carr, has a production company, IKA Collective. And for 2 years, they've been working on a documentary on me. And it's taken so long. It's really funny because Artie Lang was supposed to be in it. But then he screwed up and went in the hospital and wound up in jail and wound up addicted again. But the thing has been so long coming together that now he's out of jail and cleaned up. And so he wound up in the documentary anyway, just because it's taken so goddamn long. But it's officially done.
Wow.
The documentary's done. And, you know, and nobody can leave the house. You know, no matter what it is, whether it's your club or my buddy's Broadway show or me, of course there's people dying, but on some level it's like poor me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. When is that documentary going to come out?
Well, what we're going to do is take it around to film festivals because I'm sure we could get on. You know, there's so many places, you know, and Netflix and all these places. It's just the competition is so crazy. They probably won't want to pay a nickel. So the fun is going to be taking it to film festivals because I don't know if you guys go to film festivals, but the most fun at a film festival is to show your movie, and then there's always a Q&A afterwards.
Yeah.
And there's going to be nothing more fun. Like I said, people are still so interested in the Stern Show. I'm sure the Q&A is going to be better than the documentary, you know. And I just love that, you know. People come up and ask me questions about the show, and they say, oh, you must be so sick of talking about it. I said, listen, if I ever get sick of talking about it, put a gun into my head because, like, you know, it's It never gets old. Every time I start telling a story about the show, I think of something I never thought of before. It always looks like I'm making it up as I go along. But you can imagine, in 18 years, a lot happened. You know, a lot of crazy stuff happened, and it was more than you could ever remember. So I'm looking forward. But I'll chase you guys down. I'm probably going to wind up doing screenings at comedy clubs, because what would be more fun than that? Than, you know, to work at a comedy club like on a Friday, and then maybe show the movie on a Saturday, and then do a late show. You know, there's all kinds of way to skin a cat.
Yeah,
you know?
for sure.
So I don't know.
Definitely
But
look forward to seeing it.
it's pretty fun, and it's pretty funny, and there's a lot of, you know, Willie Nelson's in it, and Penn Jillette and Artie Lang. You know, it's a hoot. It's
Yes,
a hoot. You know,
sounds
but of course
That'll
I'm going
be-
to say that. What am I going to say? It sucks.
Always be selling.
That'll be awesome, Jackie. That'll be good.
Yeah, it better be. I just hope I'm still alive. That's all. You know, as far as promoting I still do my dial joke. I don't know if you guys know that, but I've had a dial joke for 40 years.
Yeah.
And it doesn't stop now. People are so starved to laugh. You know, it's funny. My act is like a cockroach. You know, there's people that talk about this and talk about that, and they complain about this and complain about that. You know, all I've done is tell old jokes my whole life, because that's what, you know, when I became a comic, I was already 31 years old, and I gave up music. And, you know, I didn't go looking for jokes. I've been telling jokes since I was 4 years old, and they're just ingrained in me, but they'll never go away. They will never go away. And now, you know, I got people writing to me from all over show business saying, give me a joke, tell me a joke, because the jokes are like cockroaches. They're always funny. There's no time to them. There's no pressure to them. It's like step outside yourself and laugh at something, you know?
Yeah.
And it's funny, you know. I've been saying for, you know, and then people say, God, you know, these jokes are funny. I say, well, what the fuck do you think I've been doing for 40 years, you moron? You know.
Well, I got to tell you that.
What the hell you know? What are you going to do?
You know, to the dial a joke thing. I mean, you have to be one of the first, if not the first person, to actually use an 800-900 number to sell something.
The truth of it is that it is not an 800 number.
Right.
But those numbers had just started. I'll tell you a funny story. Those numbers had just started in the late 70s. And it's so long ago. People can't, there's so much to my stories that you can't remember because you weren't around for the time. In the late 70s, all of a sudden, video came about and cable TV came about. I had a band the entire 70s, and there was absolutely no video of my band. And 2 years after we quit, everybody had videotape machines, and 2 years after that, everybody had video cameras, you know, but before they existed, they didn't exist. Just like it's hard to believe there was ever a time there weren't cell phones, but there was a long time before there was any cell phones. So when I started Dial a Joke, we had just started a comedy show at a bar in Huntington on Long Island, and we had no money. So how are we going to promote it? And I got the bright idea. So I'll get a phone line, and I'll tell a joke, and then say where we're performing, and then tell another joke, which is all that is the essence of radio and the essence of television. You know, the people sit through the ad to hear the entertainment, you know. So I told filthy jokes and then did an ad. And right away the telephone called me and said, you can't tell jokes that dirty on the phone. I said, all right. But right in 1979, January 1979, that's right when things started to change. Because all of a sudden Cablevision happened. And all of a sudden here's HBO. And all of a sudden people are sitting in the living room with their mother. And all of a sudden there's bare tits on the television screen, which was unheard of, you know. But things started changing and loosening up. So I slowly but surely made the jokes dirtier and dirtier, and they never called back again. And did you ever hear of Rick Dees?
Of course.
So Rick Dees is a disc jockey. He's number one in Los Angeles. And they had groups of people that passed around the numbers that you could call for free. And people also used to steal credit card. There were credit card numbers for phones. Because long distance calls cost a fortune, and people had credit card numbers that you would click into the phone, so you could call anywhere, and they would steal them and pass them around. And one of these nuts found it. The first thing they do is find out about all the wacky numbers. And somebody found out about my dial joke and told Rick Dees. And Rick Dees started calling my dial joke and putting it on his weekly top 40 countdown and his Los Angeles show. Now, I had no idea this, so gradually I'm making it dirtier and dirtier and dirtier. One day the guy calls me up and says, Jackie, this is Rick Dees. I've been playing your jokes from your dial joke, on my national show, but the jokes have gotten too dirty. Would you do some jokes just for me that aren't quite as dirty? And I said, sure. And I said, well, let's come up with a premise. And he said, all right, how about you're Jackie the Jokeman Martling, the guy from New York that knows all the jokes. I said, well, it sounds good to me. So he's the guy that named me Jackie the Jokeman.
Oh, that I didn't know.
And all of a sudden he started paying me, and he started advertising 516-922-WINE, and he would tell people that 516-922-9463, he would tell his national audience that was Tom Selleck's home phone number. Okay. And so the calls went through the roof, and it got absolutely nutty. And but the thing is, it was never an 800 number.
Right.
It was a phone line in my mother's attic. And it wound up being 10 lines, but I never made a nickel. It's been costing me a fortune for 40 years, but it did so much for me. And the greatest story is there were so many 800 numbers. Now, I don't know how old you guys are, but the way 800 numbers worked in the very beginning, if you had an 800 number, like to sell a book, if I called your 800 number, that cost you money.
Right.
Anybody who called your 800 number, that cost you. In other words, it cost you to advertise on it. And when Comedy Central first started, it wasn't even called Comedy Central yet. I think it was called the Ha channel, and they had a thing called Short Attention Span Theater. And I was on it one day with Joe Bolster, and as I was doing the show, they chironed across the bottom of the screen, call Jackie's joke line. Now, you guys don't remember, but in the beginning, there were so few cable shows and programs. Anything that aired 25 times because they didn't have any program. So this short attention span theater I did must have aired 20 times, okay? But across the bottom, it said, call Jackie's joke line. And instead of 516, my area code, they had it as an 800 number. And said, call Jackie's joke line, 1-800-922-WINE. And one day the phone rang and I picked it up, and this guy was out of his fucking mind. He was so pissed off because, the Hot Channel was a national TV show, and this guy owned the number 1-800-922-WIND. WIND, because he sold raincoats and wet weather apparel and rubbers and stuff. And his phone line exploded. It cost him hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And he was so pissed off. But not only that, it kept airing, and I called up and said, you guys, you got to take that off of that show. But they were so understaffed. They didn't, the last thing they were going to do was to go in and re-edit Jackie the Jokeman Short Attention Span Theater and take out a chyron. So every time the show aired, you could see the guy hit himself on the head with a hammer. That's just the funniest thing in the world. Jesus, someday I wonder if that guy's still alive. That's just such a great story.
Well, I'm going to call it as soon as we're done.
You don't ever get me going because I will never shut up. I apologize.
The only experience I've ever had with 800 or 900 numbers was once. When I was in 6th grade, I called a phone sex hotline and didn't know that they charged you, and they charged my dad $600, and my father almost beat the living shit out of me.
What kind of number was it?
What?
What kind of number was it?
It was like a 1-900 number for phone sex or some shit that was on late, and I'm 13.
Oh, and so you just stayed on. Oh, yeah. In the beginning, nobody knew that when it showed up on the bill, they actually said what it was.
Right.
You weren't the only one. A lot of people got the crap beat out of them,
Dude, yeah. My father was not happy when that happened.
Well, was it worth it?
Fuck yeah, I still do it. Except now I just call Greg.
Yeah,
So.
and I take care of it for a lot less
That
money.
sounds good. So you guys from Connecticut?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I grew up in New Jersey. Nick
I grew up in Westchester first half of my life. Then I moved to Connecticut.
Westchester. Where in Jersey?
Bergen County, right across from the city.
If I had a nickel for every show I did in Jersey, I could have retired 50,000 years ago.
Where are all those nickels?
God, great fun. Great fun.
So did you?
I don't think I went to Jersey twice in my life, and after my first year in comedy, I'd been there 10,000 times. So
yeah,
great.
So is it true you started Governors on Long Island?
You know how I wound up with Governors?
I don't.
Was because of my dial joke. We played all over Long Island in the 70s. Me and another guy. We had a 1955 bright yellow Cadillac hearse. And we were two guys playing guitars and telling dirty jokes. And we were so great and so much fun. We got to be really good friends with the guys who worked at these bars, And then there was this place called Barrymore's in Levittown on Long Island. And as they put in more and more houses, all of a sudden the neighbors were complaining about the rock and roll music, and they were going to shut them down. And they got the bright idea, why don't we have a comedy club? And one of the guys I used to work with at Neptune's Pub says, hey, why don't you call my friend Jackie, the guy with the 922 wine joke line? And they called it, and they thought it was great. And they called, and I went over there with Nancy, who wasn't my wife yet, but we were working together. And they said, we want to make this into a comedy club. And I said, sure. And I said, put the speaker there, and put the speaker there, and put the stage here, and put the lights here. And Nancy will run the sound, and I'll book the club, and I'll host the shows. And we did that for the first 2 years. And, opening night, it was packed. It was like, it was great, And then those guys, the guy that owns the three clubs now, the same guy owns Governors and McGuire's and the Brokerage. But I had actually started the show at the Brokerage actually a couple of months before Governors. But that was a music club where we just did shows on the weekend. But Governors was a full-fledged comedy club, And that I did that. But before that, the East Side Comedy Club had opened up, and that directly grew out of the show that me and another guy did at I created Dial a Joke to promote a show we did at a restaurant in Huntington, and me and the guy that did that, he opened the East Side Comedy Club with his brother. So the Governors was like the second club on Long Island. We were there in the very, very beginning. I mean, you should read. Send me your address. I'll send you a copy of my book. If you're interested in that crap at all, it's pretty interesting how the whole thing went down. The guy Richie Minervini is still one of my good friends. You know.
Yeah, no, I think it's awesome. Plus, I mean, this place still exists, and it's a great comedy club. And I just didn't know that you were involved.
That's another cockroach that's been around forever. The clubs come and go and come and go.
For sure. So. One thing from the Stern era that I'd love to ask you about, because it's the one, if someone asked me what one Stern show memory do you recollect the most, it's the show from late 1990s, maybe 97, 98-ish, when Rodney Dangerfield was on, and you and him had that argument about...
I've explained this. I just talked to somebody like a couple of days ago. You got to get my book. The whole thing is explained in my book, because the whole thing was a total, it was totally entertainment, a total fabrication.
Right.
Because it's so funny, because I actually did borrow $1,000 from him, and it was his idea for me to pay him the balance of what I owed him in jokes. But by the time Rodney left, they had me owing him $3,000, and I still get emails from people saying, "Jackie, pay Rodney the money you owe him," and I have to write back and say, "Listen, number one, he's dead, and number two, I never owed it to him in the first place."
Yeah,
He loved me. I gave him his best joke ever, and it's very interesting. But I'm too tired of telling the story.
Yeah, no,
because it's it's one of those things where it's an exaggeration based on an actual lie.
Yeah, of course.
So from the word go, it sounds like I'm full of shit. You know what I mean?
It's just my most vivid memory of all the Stern Show stuff, because I actually, for a while, I was spending a lot of time in Southern California with my parents, and we were living in a hotel, and my next door hotel neighbor was Rodney Dangerfield. And I would go outside. I would go out every morning and have breakfast at the pool. And Rodney, and I was probably 16 or 17 years old, maybe 15, but in that age range. And Rodney would sit down at the table.
What is this, like in what, like the early 2000s?
No, God, no. I'm way older than that. It was in the mid to late 80s, I think. Had to be 80s, early 90s, maybe.
So was he? I don't really have it straight. So was he already with that woman, with the woman with the flowers?
Oh my God, I don't remember. I honestly, I don't remember, because he would just come out and sit down with me. Well, not at my table, but the table next to me, outside of his room, shirtless in white tennis shorts, and just sit.
Right, but he was still fine. He still could get around.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, no, he was fine. And every morning for an entire summer, he would talk to me, and basically he called me. He's like, "What are you eating for breakfast this morning, kid?"
Yeah, listen. You know what I'll do? What I'll do is I will send you. I got your email address, so I'll send you the Rodney chapter, and there's a couple of Rodney stories that didn't make it into the book because I had enough for 2 books,
yeah,
and
sure.
I only could put in half the stuff. So I'll send you the Rodney stuff. You'll get a kick out of it, but it explains the whole Rodney thing.
Yeah,
and,
no. And to this day, whenever someone asks me, says, "Hey man, can you you owe me $30," and I instinctively say, "Can I pay you in jokes?"
That's great, and this will be great for you to be equipped with the actual information, and I actually, it's in my book. I actually have the letter from him saying, "All right, I'm going to take these 4 jokes. I'm sending you a check for $200."
Right.
So it's not like it's any kind of fabrication or anything.
Yeah, no, I just think.
But it is interesting, because just in the very beginning, Howard didn't want anybody to know I was passing him jokes. Like people don't advertise where stuff comes from, but it's like watching Johnny Carson. Who gives a fuck who wrote the jokes for him? You're laughing at Carson and you're enjoying him. It's got nothing to do with anything. You know what I mean? It's if you're watching the Carson show, who cares who built the set? You know what I mean? Like it's all part of the whole thing,
right.
But it wound up being very crazy, very crazy.
Yeah, you built a hell of a career, man. It's cool to hear you started just like me. I started when I was 30, so just didn't get into it too late, but giving me hope for a good future here. What I wanted to ask you,
I had no intention of it. I was playing guitar and writing songs. I just wasn't any good at it. And when I got kicked out of my last band, I figured I'd tell my jokes on stage till I came up with something different, and it just started to work. And then I sent my comedy albums around and sent them to Howard. It was all so happenstance, but but something was going to happen. If you just keep pushing, you know what I mean? If you sit home, nothing happens. But if you're outside pushing, something's going to happen. It's that simple,
Did you always know?
Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. I was going to say, did you always know you were a funny guy? Because I was doing some research on you, and I saw you have a mechanical engineering degree from Michigan State, which is a serious major. I know a few of them, pretty brilliant people. So, and you went right into comedy and music, which I think is funny.
No, not even a little bit. What happened was I told jokes my whole life, and then I learned how to play guitar in high school, so I could, it'd be easier to get broads, And the truth of it is, I was always really, really smart. And my father had been an engineer for a couple of years at Alabama State, but he was a drunk more than an engineer. And when I was in college, I was like raised by wolves, and it was a crazy family. And all of a sudden, all the people in my little high school, hey, I had a meeting with the counselor today, and I'm thinking of applying here, and hey, I'm going to meet with this college, and we're going to visit this college, and I'm like, and I was from a community here on the North Shore of Long Island where it was college bound, like everybody's destined to go to college theoretically. And I realized, this is an absolute true story, I realized if I was going to go to college, I had to get up off my ass and do something about it. So back in those days, there was a thing called the Barron's Book, which had a list of every college in the country. And it cost like $20, and I put the money in an envelope and sent for the Barron's Book, and the Barron's Book came in the mail. And nobody has to believe this, but I was thumbing through the Barron's Book, and all of a sudden it said Michigan State University, and underneath it, in parentheses, it said 40,000, which was the student body. And I said, you know what? That's 20,000 girls. So I applied to Michigan State, and then I applied to Penn State, and I applied to Syracuse, and I applied to Rutgers. I got accepted everywhere, but I went to Michigan State because it was far enough away that I wouldn't have to come home and see my high school girlfriend on the weekend, so I could have some fun. And I never had any intention of being a mechanical engineer. I just knew if I didn't take a difficult major, that I would drink myself to death and I'd wind up flunking out. So I took mechanical engineering, which was beyond challenging, atomic physics and mechanics and chemistry. And, it was crazy. Like I do, 12 hours of lab for the same credits my roommate would get for reading the Shakespeare and get 4 credits in the literature course, And it took me 5 years because I was actually in college the year of, Woodstock, tune in, drop out and all that, it was like, I missed a year. I missed one term because I got operated on my knee, and I missed a term because I dropped out, and I missed another term because I had flunked enough courses to equal a term. And then after the Woodstock year, I met a girl and fell in love and said, well, I got nothing to do. Might as well go back to college. So we went back to Michigan State, and I finished and got my diploma. And it's always thrown people, and I started playing guitar. I mean, I never did stop playing guitar. And then came home to New York and played guitar with a guy that actually taught me in ninth grade. And so all I did was play the guitar in bands until I started telling jokes. I never did any kind of a job. I mean, I worked construction in Denver for 4 months, which is just long enough to make you say, I'm never doing that bullshit again, And
yeah, I saw that.
People had always
like
throws people. I love saying mechanical engineer because everybody like cleans their ear out. Like, what do you say? Because it's not like just graduating from college. That's you can't fuck around. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Anthony was saying, like it's like when you're on the Howard Stern show, you can't fake it. In high school, you can walk in and sit behind the person in front of you and nod out. But if you're on the Stern show, no matter how drunk you got the night before, you still got to come in and do what you're doing, or you're going to get called on it. So it's been a pretty interesting ride.
Yeah. Do you still listen to the Stern show at all?
I never did, ever. When I first sent my albums to him, in 1982, I, of course, had no idea who he was.
Right.
The guy told me about him when I was working in Washington, D.C., and so I sent my albums blind. But I didn't listen to the show when we were on vacation. I never listened to Best Of. I just never did. I wasn't a radio guy, and to this day, people don't believe that. They say, "Oh, why do you say you don't believe it? Why do you say you don't listen?" I'm like, listen, I got no axe to grind. I got no problem telling you if I did. It just wouldn't be true, And plus, if I listen to it and I laugh, maybe I'll feel bad. And if I don't laugh, I'll feel worse. Or I'm going to sit there and think of what I would have said or what I would have written. Fuck that. I'm just not interested,
Right. Yeah, I'm just curious.
It's in my rearview mirror,
Yep. I just like that you picked a college based on the odds of girls.
Yeah, that was great.
You know what? as crazy. I don't know about you, but there's certain things in your life. You know, I mean, I've got decades. I mean, I don't remember the 70s. I guess it was supposed to have been pretty much fun, but for the most part, I have no idea that it happened. But I know where I was sitting when I opened that book and saw that figure. You know, if I got a Barron's book from 1965, it'd be so funny. You know, I bet you they would have it on eBay. That'd be funny to find that actual page. Because now I think the student body of Michigan State now is probably 250,000. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a lot. I have a couple friends that go. That one of them's actually a sophomore. He's a comedian, and nonetheless, and it's big. It's a big student body for sure.
Massive. I couldn't have that school is too big. Couldn't do it.
That's what she said.
You know, it's so funny because so many people. You know, I say, "Where'd you go to school?" I used to say Michigan State. And they say, "Wow, man, that's great." And somebody say, "Did you know that Jackie went to Michigan?" And a lot of times when I got interviewed, they'd misquote me, and I'd correct them. And then finally, I said, "Just shut up, Jackie," because if somebody says this is Jackie Martling, he went to Michigan, that's handing me 500 SAT points. You know what I mean? Because University of Michigan is almost like an Ivy League, and Michigan State is a fucking cow college, you know.
Well, plus all the alumni who are going to say, "Hey, you know, Jackie went to Michigan."
Yeah, like that's bullshit. You know, it's so funny.
So Jackie, before all this virus stuff hit, were you still going out and doing sets and doing stand up?
You know, I've never stopped. I went to. The last two shows I did a show in Boca Raton, actually sold out show in Boca Raton in the first week of January. And then I didn't have any work much in January. And then I did a couple of shows at Dino's, Uncle Vinny's Comedy Club. I'm sure you guys, well, maybe you wouldn't hear that. I don't know. It's in South Jersey. On my birthday on Friday and Saturday, and a couple more sold out shows. But I've never, ever stopped. You know, sometimes I'll do, you know, 2 shows in a week. And sometimes I'll go a couple of weeks without a gig. You know, and of course, a bunch of gigs have been canceled since this whole thing started. But I'm not like booked out the ass, but I get, you know, as much work as I like. You know, I love doing it. It's a very funny thing. It's like eating sweets or something. You know, it's really fun to do once a week. It's not so much fun to do twice a week, and it sucks to do 3 times a week. And it really sucks if you don't do it for 3 weeks. You know, there's a sweet spot in there somewhere. You know, and then if you do a show with a lousy crowd, you can't wait to get up and kill the next time because, you know. But it's a dance. Yeah. But I've never let up ever. I've been going. January, I consider my first gig January of 1979, the first time a guy actually, I call it my first comedy gig, the first time I got paid for telling jokes and playing the guitar, as opposed to playing the guitar and telling jokes, which sounds like very different, but I mean, it sounds like the same thing, but it really isn't. Yeah. You know, if you're playing the guitar and singing songs and telling jokes in between, it's a lot different than doing joke, and then strumming a guitar chord and saying a dirty song title, you know.
Yeah. Well, listen, I mean, hopefully we can get you out once this is all back up and running. We can do live events again.
Well, it's not easy. The only way you could get me to do your club is to ask me.
Yeah, of course. We will.
I tell people, shit, I say yes before the fucking phone rings. Just, I'd love to come out there. We'll have fun.
Yeah, we definitely will. It's a good room. It's intimate. And everyone obviously is coming expecting to laugh.
Now, what town? This is Fairfield?
No. The club is in South Norwalk, just the town one town south of Westport.
Wow, I love it up there. Yeah, that's a simple ride.
Yeah,
a simple ride. You know, Rodney used to live in Westport.
Yeah, he sure did. Very close to where I am, actually. He sure did.
He's a character.
He sure was.
All right, guys, listen, we could do this anytime. Okay. Do me a favor, email me your second email.
Okay.
What's the other guy, Nick?
Yeah, I'll get it all to you.
Yeah.
So, Nick, send me an email. In fact, tell your audience, anybody who wants dirty jokes, all you got to do is email me, jokeland@AOL.com, JOKELAND @AOL.com. I send jokes to everybody all over the world. I exchange jokes with, like, Willie Nelson and Ken Gillette and the whole world.
I want to see Willie's jokes.
People need it more than ever now.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's a good thing. All right, Jackie, thank you very much. Most importantly, stay safe and healthy.
Yeah.
All right, man. My pleasure.
It.
Thanks a lot, you guys. I appreciate the airtime. It's
Thank
fun.
you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.